Emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with House Rule 67 and the Governor's Emergency Order Number 12, Executive Order 2020-04. This public body is authorized to meet electronically. This is a public hearing of bills referred to the Ways and Means. Executive session on pending legislation may be held. Please note that there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by the Zoom platform or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available in the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for this meeting complies with the House RSA 91A. Anyone who has a problem accessing the meeting should call 271-3600 or email hcs@leg.state.nh.us. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. I want to introduce the staff that are on the meeting to assist us. Jennifer Ford, committee researcher. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting should be done by roll call votes. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Representative Bernstein, I want to take the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to you and good morning to everyone.
Morning.
It's March 16th, 2021, 9:03 a.m. We'll begin roll call with Representative Patrick Abrami.
My wife's in the house.
Representative Mary Griffin. Representative Jordan O'Leary.
Mary's here. Mary's here. You got to just tell her how to.
Star 6, Mary, to unmute. Star 6.
This is Mary Griffin, and I'm here, and I'm alone in my home in Windham.
It is great to hear your voice. Good morning.
Thank you very much.
Representative O'Leary.
I'm here. The wife is in the house someplace in Hudson.
Representative Ober.
Here in Hudson with the 6 cats.
Representative Fred Doucette.
Good morning, all. Here in my home office in Salem alone.
Your clerk is Alan Burstein. I'm here in my home office in beautiful Nottingham, New Hampshire by myself. Representative Elliott.
I'm here in Salem, New Hampshire, and my wife is in the living room.
Good morning. Representative Janigian.
Yes, I'm here in Salem, New Hampshire, and my wife is in the house.
Good morning. And Janigian, did I get that right?
Perfect.
Thank you. Representative Nunes.
Good morning, Mr. Clerk. I'm home alone in Pelham.
Good morning. Representative Tim Baxter.
Good morning, Mr. Clerk, and I'm home alone as well.
Representative Spilsbury.
Good morning. Home in Charlestown alone for now.
Good morning. Representative Paul Tudor.
Home in Northwood, wife's in.
Good morning. Representative Almy.
Home alone in Lebanon.
Representative Richard Ames.
I'm home alone in Jaffrey.
Good morning. Representative Southworth.
Home alone in Dover.
Representative Dennis Malloy. Representative Malloy. Representative Schamberg.
I'm in my office in Wilmot and my wife's in her office. Thank you.
Okay, you're actually in your office. It's good to hear. Representative
Oh, that's good.
Representative Tucker.
I'm home alone in Randolph.
Good morning. Representative Gomarlo.
I'm home alone in Swansea.
Representative Loftman. Representative Tom Loftman. Representative Gorg. Representative Mary Hacken Phillips.
Morning. I come to you alone from my office in Concord.
Good morning. Representative James Murphy.
Good morning. I am home alone in Hanover.
And our chair, Representative Norman Major.
Good morning. I'm in my office in Gloucester. My wife is in the house. And
Good
I
morning.
just got an email from Dennis Malloy. He's going to try to join at 9 via telephone. So we'll be looking for a telephone symbol for Representative Malloy.
There is a phone ending in 827 over in the attendees. I have no way of knowing how do they raise their hand if they're *9?
Yes, *9.
So if you're Dennis Malloy, raise your hand by pressing *9. Okay, Mr. Chair, there are 21 members present, 3 are not present.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Representative.
I was told that Representative Gorg will be away all this week. I'm
Okay.
sorry if she didn't tell you to.
What was the phone numbers, last 4 digits?
827?
Yeah, I think that's Dennis.
Okay. Gen 4. I can't promote him to panelist for some reason. I'll send her a text too.
Will he be able to, as an attendee, he should be able to hear us anyway, right?
Yes, and I can allow him to speak as well.
Okay.
But there's a way to do it because Mary's been promoted. So Gen 4 must be able to do that.
Okay. All right, we have Senate bills this morning. The first 2 bills have the same title. I'm going to do Senate Bill 22-FN first, followed by Senate Bill number 27. Senate Bill 22-FN relative to the sale of Lucky 7 tickets. And my sponsor is Senator French. Senator French has signed in support, but he will not be testifying. Senator Reagan, Hennessy, Gannon. Senator Reagan is in support as a co-sponsor, is not testifying. Senator Hennessy is in support, not testifying. And who is testifying is a Tyler Clark, who's a lobbyist. Is Tyler?
Do you need someone to introduce the bill, Norm?
Be introduced first.
You want me to introduce it?
That's it.
Looks like Senator Guide is on the call. I don't know if he's there, Pat.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Sorry.
Oh, he's not on 22 as a sponsor, but
Yeah, he's the next bill.
yeah. Whatever you'd like to do.
Then if Senator Geider is here, why don't we go right to 27?
Mr. Chairman, so we're not going to listen to the lobbyist?
We will, but we're going to come back to that. Since Senator Geider is here, we're going to go to Senate Bill 27. That's also relative to the sale of Lucky 7 tickets. And Senator Geider is the prime and only sponsor of this bill. So Senator Geider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I loud and clear this morning?
You are.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here before this committee as prime sponsor of Senate Bill 27. For the record, Senator Bob Guida representing the 27 towns of District 2, and chairman of the Ways and Means in the Senate. This is a bill that's primarily a housekeeping bill from the requested by the commission. And accordingly, I'll go through the different parts of the bill. Part 1 changes the term of a charity gaming license from 12 months from issue to annually expiring at the end of each calendar year. Again, that will make housekeeping and managing the licensure much easier for the Gaming Commission. Part 2 expands the definition of charitable organizations for the purposes of issuing charitable gaming, bingo, and Lucky 7 licenses. It really doesn't expand. What it does is it incorporates all of the gaming. There are two types, basically, 287D and 287E. One deals with Lucky 7 and bingo, and the other deals with poker games. And what we'll do is standardize the language between the two. In that sense, it is an expansion because an organization would have to put in for one type of license but wouldn't be qualified for another. They'd have to go after the other license separately. Again, it is a request of the department. Part 3 corrects incorrect references to the Lottery Commission, where instead it was supposed to be referring to the commission paid on each dollar. So incorrectly, the lottery had gotten its way in there. I don't know whether it was a word processing issue or some other error, but that corrects that problem. And then the Roman 4 changes the definition of the deal in references to Lucky 7. Again, requested by the lottery people, and happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Senator Geiger? Hold on a second. Representative Elmy. Representative Elmy, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Gaida, I'm a little confused because I think that your definition of the deal contradicts the one in 22. And some of this also overlaps with I believe it's 25. Why weren't all of these just in one bill?
I can't answer that, Madam Vice Chair. I have only, again, I deal with the bills that I sponsor as far as amalgamating them into one bill. Again, the person has the right to sponsor a bill, and I think that's the way they came through the process. We would look to our esteemed colleagues in the House, perhaps, to remedy those.
And if I could have a follow-up.
Follow-up. You're muted, Susan.
I thought I'd unmuted it. All of the references in section 2 then are things that are already in one statute or another, but we're just combining them into the same one.
That's correct.
Thank you. Does this mean that bingo has been reducing into a small corner of the charitable gaming world when it used to be the charitable gaming world back in the fire department days? Does this make it pretty much sure that there's only occasionally going to be a game of bingo in the very back of a large hall of machines and poker?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it will mean in terms of those parameters, Representative. Again, what we're trying to do is to standardize the language between and simplify the process for the charitable organizations that are requesting licenses. As far as what will be the end result, I'm not sure. I'm not sure anybody can be sure of what it will produce.
We have Charlie McIntyre in the attendees. And Janine, you may want to bring him in. And I'm sure that'd be a good question for Charlie.
Thank you.
I promoted him, and Valerie King has her hand up as well.
And Valerie is his partner, right? So why don't you promote her too?
Are we done asking questions of
No,
Senator Guy?
Representative Ames? The next
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, and I have three quick questions, and if Senator Guida thinks they're better answered by Director McIntyre, that would be fine. So on the first page of the bill, you're changing, the bill changes the registration with the Secretary of State requirement to having been registered for at least 1 year, changing from a 2-year requirement. Do you know why that change has been made?
I would defer to the department.
Okay. The second, I'm sorry.
Charlie could answer that. Charlie?
Yeah.
Actually, Valerie, if you would answer that for us. Sorry, not to keep passing it along, but Valerie, if you're on.
Yeah, the change from 2 years to 1 year was actually something that was proposed by someone outside of the agency. We just wanted the language, the definitions of a charitable charitable organization to match so that we can vet an organization once rather than twice. But the 2 to 1 year was recommended or suggested from somebody outside the agency.
All right. So I go on, Chair Major?
Yes.
All right. The second question is on the same page. In the to be eligible for licensure under this chapter, a charitable organization shall do all of the following. Then you've got a list 1, 2, 3, and 4. All of this is new. And the fourth one is maintain a current list of bona fide members. I know, and I'm sure that all of you know, that many charities don't have are not membership organizations. And I guess I assume, I don't know for sure, that non-membership charitable organizations participate in charitable gaming. So my question is, isn't what I just said true, and why this additional requirement?
Can either Charlie or Valerie answer that?
Valerie, is this our language?
This is the language that was originally in one of the statutes. Again, we're just trying to match them so we can vet the charity once for all game types. Generally, if there is just a single member, like there's got to be somebody, so that member list would probably have one person on it. It's mostly, our member list is primarily so that we know who is authorized to do certain activities.
Okay, I think there's a membership, a drafting issue there.
Okay. So Representative Ames, your point, like members or officers or the equivalent of?
I know that sounds like what you want to get at, but that's, if you want to say that, you need to say that, because members, bona fide members, to get the entire phrase out, is a term that has meaning legally. And I think you need to be, the language needs to be different. There are membership organizations, just to throw one out, that's a national one is the Sierra Club, is a membership charity. And Planned Parenthood, to take another example, is not, and so forth.
Charlie and Valerie, is that something we can look into and get resolved?
Of course.
Just wanted to clarify one thing. One of the reasons why we need the members list is for certain games like bingo and Lucky 7, only bona fide members are allowed to participate in the operation of the games. And so that's what we would use the list for.
So bingo.
Sorry.
You all set, Representative Ames?
No, I got a third one.
Go ahead.
On the, this may be an easier one for the lottery. On the deal definition, which is on page 3 at the bottom, there's this new definition. Instead of being a box or bag, the deal becomes a, quote, single game of uncirculated Lucky 7 tickets. And that begs the question, at least to me, what is a single game? Can you answer that?
So a single game, a deal of Lucky Sevens is a set number of tickets. It can be from, currently we have anywhere up to 3,500 tickets makes a deal. That's a single game. There are so many winners and so many losers in that deal. So whether it comes in a box or a bag is irrelevant. What a deal is, and if you look at definitions from other states on how they define a deal, it's that set game with a certain number of winners and losers within that set number of tickets.
Okay. I'll take that away and chew on it. I don't have any other questions.
You're all set, Representative Ames?
I am.
Okay. Representative Bromley, followed by Tucker and Almy. Representative Bromley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess that this question will be for the lottery, but it appears, and this is a follow-up to Representative Ames' discussion about who's eligible, and obviously here we go again with the list of Internal Revenue sections, codes, and it appears that there are 6. You have to have one of those codes to be eligible as a charity, which is consistent. If you go to page 2, in 2 spots, it looks like they just moved that around. Those 6 exist, but they're crossed out because I guess we moved it to this section. And then that would be line 9, 8, 9 on page 2. And then again, line 18 on page 2 are crossed out because they've moved that. So it doesn't look like we've added or deleted any codes that would make someone eligible, a charity eligible. Although I think what Representative Ames is saying, and Representative Ames, please chime in and correct me if I'm wrong, is that now that you look at those codes, that there may be other Internal Revenue codes of organizations that actually are already participating in charitable gaming. So maybe I can ask Dick if that's correct, and then have Charlie respond.
Dick?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, that I don't know. I don't know the full extent of each of these IRC sections, and as you point out, I think I haven't looked at it closely, but I don't think there's any change in the list.
I did. There isn't. Yeah.
You did, yeah. So it's really a different point that it's the use of the word members as a mandatory part of what an organization is supposed to provide as documentation to the to the lottery, I guess. It's supposed to maintain a current list of bona fide members. I don't know what that means. And I think the statutory language should be a little more complete, particularly since you've got this, I'd say, confusion or this other source of authority for charities that uses the concept of membership in a different way.
Okay. Can Charlie react to that, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, of course, certainly. I think Representative Ames brings up a good point as to the what is sentence 4 of that section related to bona fide members and can be worked on, but otherwise there'd be no changes to it as from where we would see it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep, I'm set then. Thank
You
you.
all set, Representative Abrami?
I'm all set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Representative Tucker?
Yes, I think we've all missed Representative Griffin. I wanted to make sure that she is satisfied with the language as presented. And I count on her for her special knowledge. Could she comment, please, about how she's viewing this?
Representative Griffin?
Maybe she needs reminding about how to.
You are unmuted, Representative Griffin. You hit *6 again. Yep, there you go. One more time. *6 to unmute, Mary.
Thank you.
And,
Yes, I am following. I'm really very closely attuned to what's going on in the gambling. I'm following it along, and I'm not having a problem at the moment.
I just wanted to make sure that you're happy.
Well, I'll be happy if it comes out the way that I want it to be. Yes.
and may I just remind you to hit *9 to raise your hand?
Yes,
And
I will do that. Thank you, dear.
we'll see that. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Elney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure that Representative Griffin has seen the bill yet. She hadn't yesterday. So I would like to ask about two things. One of them is we retained another bill because we were unclear about what's in all of these IRC codes and wanted to think about it more this summer. And bundling everything together at this point so that it covers all of bingo and charitable gaming is something I think needs to be more, we need to look at this language very carefully across all of the provisions that are here. And that's dealing with the sections 1 to 4 part and I'm not sure myself about this 1 to 2 years to have a bona fide charity and what is involved in being actually registered with the is it the Secretary of State or is it charitable? Secretary of State. Anybody can register anything with the Secretary of State and not and it doesn't really do anything except that they're supposed to send you a postcard in 5 years to ask if you still exist. I don't.
Question, Representative.
Yeah, I don't really understand if there is any if it is registered with the AG's charitable or charitable division. That's one thing, but if it's registered with the Secretary of State, that seems like an extremely. I could register as a temple of worship tomorrow, and they wouldn't notice what was going on. For at least that's the way it has been. And the final thing that I wanted to look at was Section 5, the definition of a deal is on the 300,500 limit still in law somewhere if that gets changed the way it is there. Thank you.
Do you have a question?
That was the question. The rest of it was a comment.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Senator Geiger.
Thank you very much. On the issue of the charitable organizations I have a list. It's very specific as to what those are. I'd be happy to provide it to the committee. I can read it to you now if you're interested. It won't take long. 501c3 is a charity organization. 501c4, social welfare organizations such as a housing association. 501c7 is fraternities and social clubs. 501c8 is fraternal benefit societies that provide various types of insurance to members. 501c10 is fraternal organizations such as the Moose Club. And 501c19 are veterans organizations. So those would be as defined in the dark language in section number, or is it section number? Yes. And as far as the deal, the 3,500 is defined in statute at present. There is some legislation that is moving forward to change that number. But at present, it is statutorily defined as 3,500.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I point out to Senator Gaida that 501c4 is also the code for all political PACs, political action committees.
Fine. I think we need to go on. Next is Representative Hacken Phillips.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to pick up on what Representative Ames was stating before in regards to some nonprofit charities that when they become formed have the option to select formal membership or no formal membership in the original formation process at the Secretary of State's office. There are many educational, medical, scientific society type nonprofit organizations that select not to have formal membership or employees and to strictly function as a public good. So they do not have formal membership in that formation process. Therefore, they would not qualify under this definition for that bona fide membership as it stands here, in my legal opinion. My concern is that, you would be excluding several very worthy charitable organizations just from this change. And I would, bring that to your attention and just ask you, why you would intend to exclude those important organizations as well.
You want to respond, either Senator Geider or Valerie or Charles?
I think there's certainly no intent to exclude anyone, and I would welcome any change to that part of this legislation that's proposed. I'd certainly welcome a change that makes it more inclusive and enables such organizations, if they so desire, to participate.
Valerie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that a bona fide member is defined in the statute under the definition section. Also, it's referred throughout the statute. So if you do make a change, you're going to have to make changes throughout. Again, the intent is we need to know who is authorized to participate, because the statute for Lucky 7 and Bingo limit who can actually operate the games to bona fide members. So it would require a significant change to the statute.
Charlie, do you have anything to add?
No, that was what I was going to suggest as well, is that we have defined that already. And we need to make changes through the law if we change it here as well.
Okay. Are you all set, Representative Hacken Phillips? All right, then we'll go to Representative Bromley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back to the whole issue of the Secretary of State being registered with the Secretary of State. That's in current statute. There's nothing changed there. So my question for Charlie McIntyre is, how does that process work? If a charity wants to get involved, does the Lottery Commission get involved to double check that they're also registered with the Secretary of State? Or can you just clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, we do. Certainly, Valerie does check with the Secretary of State's office to confirm that they've been registered with there for the past 2 years. and that there is a process by which they do disclose information in the Secretary of State's office. Val, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, we can actually go on the Secretary of State's website to confirm, and we do, especially if we have the number, the registration number, we can easily confirm that they're still in good standing with Secretary of State. If we have any questions, we can also reach out to the Secretary of State to confirm.
Okay, thank you. Again, it's nothing new. This is current statute. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Almy. You're muted, Susan. Susan, you're muted.
I know it's very difficult sometimes to get my laptop to unmute. Could we, before we finish dealing with this bill, talk to the Secretary of State's registration office about how they're handling these now? Because it used to be that you would just walk in and fill out a form and you were all of a sudden a company, or I don't know whether there's a separate one for charitable organizations, but there was no follow-up at all. And we've had cases on the condominium side that I work on where people would register and unregister as condominium or homeowner organizations at will without the board of the organization knowing it had been done, or without the people in the association knowing that they were an association. So I would like to have a conversation with the Secretary of State's office to see whether this actually means anything.
We can arrange to have somebody from the Secretary of State.
Thank you.
Work session. Representative Ames.
Thank you. This is just a quick comment that I think first there's confusion because we've got several bills before us this morning dealing with the same subject and overlapping, and we've got two of them right in this hearing space right now, but there's two others that deal with Lucky 7 or games of chance. And we're going to have to put them together. I mean, it doesn't make any sense what we've got before us right now. So that's a task ahead of us, I think. And then on this question of membership, I think it's all I want to say is I think it's easily resolved. And the phrase maintain a current list of bona fide members shouldn't be in the eligibility section, which is where it is right now. There should be a separate requirement. If there should be such a requirement, I'll take that as given, since that's what you require now, and say separately that in the appropriate place that a charitable organization participating in this process shall maintain a list of bona fide members as defined in such and such section of the statute. That sort of takes care of the problem, since it is a defined term, as has been pointed out. So that's all I had to say. That's a comment, not a question.
All right. Valerie, you have your hand up. Valerie, do you have anything else?
Yes, I just wanted to have two things. Representative Ames makes a good point. I just want to make sure that if you remove it from one, you remove it from both, because the whole point of this proposed language is so that they match each other between Lucky 7 and Games of Chance and bingo. The other thing I just wanted to let Representative Almy know that the reason why we use Secretary of State is more for making sure that they've been in existence and are in New Hampshire, they can do business in New Hampshire. So that's mostly what we use Secretary of State for, is just to confirm that they are in New Hampshire business and registered to do business in New Hampshire, and that they've been in existence for 2 years.
Okay, I don't,
For 1 year.
but there's one more hand. Representative Elliott. Bob, you're muted.
Sorry, this is for Valerie King. Did you say that, quote, a bona fide member, unquote, is in the bill?
Bona fide member is already defined in statute under RSA 287E1 Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3. So that's in the statute already. It's not part of the bill.
So it's already in the bill. Thank you very much.
Okay, since seeing no other hands, I'm going to ask Senator Geider, what's the primary difference between Senate Bill 27 and Senate Bill 22?
That's an excellent question, Mr. Chairman, and at this point, I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay. I have one other person signed up to speak on this, and that is Rick Newman, and he's in attendance. So Janine, could you bring him in? Rick Newman is a lobbyist from the Grover Gaming in support of the bill. And I notice it says 0 minutes, so does that mean he doesn't want to speak, or?
I've promoted him. He's muted. I'm not sure if he wants to speak or not.
Rick Newman, do you want to speak on this bill?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. My screen changed. I think it was because of the way I was brought in. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rick Newman, and representing New Hampshire Charitable Gaming Operators Association on Senate Bill 27. I will be brief. I did just want to say that, for instance, Section 1 is a change to go back to what it used to be. It used to be that in games of chance, poker rooms, the licenses for charities were good until December 31st. A few years ago, that was changed to make them run for 12 months. And that's caused a lot of confusion with the people who license charities in the rooms and with the lottery. So we feel that's an excellent change to return to what used to be. That really is a housekeeping measure, but it will save a lot of headaches for a lot of people. Section 2, the various 501c3s, Senator Geider went through those. My understanding is all that's happening there is that currently, though that list exists in 287E, the bingo statute, and it's now being replicated in 287D, the games of chance / poker room statute. Again, to make it the same between both statutes. I'd like the issue of the deal definition. This was something that the Administrative Rules Committee asked for about 4 years ago, maybe longer, that this be addressed because the current deal definition is simply outdated. It says bag or box, and that's not the way deals of Lucky Sevens really come exclusively anymore. And so that deal definition doesn't have any implications beyond the fact that it is recognizing that this new deal language will in fact comport to what is happening in the marketplace. And the issue about the membership, to Representative Ames's issue, I do know, perhaps Ms. King can address this. I know that currently there are charities, for instance, I've run into it with Little Leagues, where you don't really have a member, but there are Little Leagues that participate in charity gaming. And I think they've accommodated that in some ways by I think in the case of Little Leagues, for instance, they have, they use the parents of the kids who participate. But that language, bona fide members, is in the current 287E. It looks new because it's being added to 287D, again, for the reason to just have the same language in both statutes. But it's not new. And one final point, to Representative Almey's point about how easy it is to register with Secretary of State, and that's absolutely accurate. But I would point out that it's not just registering with the Secretary of State that makes a charity eligible. You also have to be the charity. So you have to be, registered under one of these 501c3s and have a letter from the IRS acknowledging that. And then in addition to that, you register with the Secretary of State in New Hampshire to, as Ms. King pointed out, to demonstrate that you are a New Hampshire-based charity. With that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my testimony. We do support this bill.
Testimony, Mr. Newman. We take questions.
I will.
Representative Yurley.
Thank you. I was having a hard time getting onto the internet for some reason or another. At any rate, regarding membership lists, etc., the Knights of Columbus, particularly down in Salem, do a large amount of fundraising using gaming. Lists of memberships are not possible from a 501c8 such as the Knights of Columbus. That's going to be a bit of a problem. And then in addition, your comprehensive list that Senator Geider read out did not include the Masons, and the Masons are engaged in gaming. They're a 501c10. They're sometimes making a laundry list of who can participate and who can't creates issues. There's some problems with both of these bills in trying to clarify. They've actually muddied the waters as far as I see so far. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat.
But I would point out, I agree with you, Representative Ullery. 501c10s are listed and the Masons are one of those groups, or a number of groups. I don't think every one of them was mentioned, but yes, a 501c10 would include a Masons, the Knights of Columbus, several other types of organizations that come under that. That is in current law, as I understand, and it is currently the list that exists in RSA 287E, and it's simply by this bill being added to 287D for the purposes of making both statutes the same.
Yes, I understand that, Mr. Newman, but the situation is when you start asking for lists of members, you're getting into territory where you're asking for confidential information. People join, the Masons are much more secret than the Knights are now at this point, but their membership lists are not public. Ours are not public. There's been incidents where public lists have been made, private lists have been made public either through hacking operations or inattention of bureaucracies. I hate to say that to you, Charlie, but they're a bureaucracy. That's a bit of an issue for the Knights of Columbus, is, getting involved with registering with the Secretary of State or the Charitable Division. And I agree, the Secretary of State doesn't follow through on much, unless are a corporation and they want their money every April.
Okay, Representative Bromley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Newman, when it comes to the current statutes, to forget about this bill, is there any provision for exceptions to the rule that you're aware of? And I'll ask the same question of Ms. King or Charlie McIntyre as well.
Well, I know, for instance, and I'm sure Valerie can answer this better, but I do know, for instance, the Tilted Little League is one where you don't have members per se, but I know they participate in charities, charity gaming. So I guess the answer is they must have some provisions where they allow, so-called non-member charities to participate. They must give them, I believe with the case of Little Leagues, they give the parents list, but I defer to Valerie.
Valerie?
As far as who's considered a member, we basically, we feel that the charity determines what makes somebody eligible for membership. I mean, the statute does say they have to be a member for at least 60 days, but it's really the charity's criteria on what they consider membership to be. So we don't go any deeper than them providing a list of who they consider their members to be so that we can confirm that only those individuals are participating in the operations.
But follow up, Mr. Chair.
Oh,
So Valerie, but they would have to, there's no exception to the Internal Revenue codes that are here. So are we saying that Little League falls in one of these IRS codes?
We have had Little Leagues as charitable organizations, so I assume that they do. I'm not sure which one.
Okay, thank you. I'm set, Mr. Chair.
Representative Ames.
Thank you. So, Mr. Newman, the first question is whether you know why the move from 2 years to 1 year for the registration requirement.
I'm sorry, I don't. I remember that somebody ran into that problem, and I honestly don't recall who it was. I don't recall who asked for that.
Okay, so far we've got a change that nobody can explain. So that's just a comment. And in terms of this membership issue, I'm thinking of a local charity that's here in Jaffrey and in the Monadnock region that's called Monadnock at Home. That's a wonderful charity serving homeless people. It's not a membership organization. I don't think they'd know what to say if you asked who are your members. I know they considered, they do not participate, but they considered participating in charitable games as a way of maybe raising some money, and have chosen not to. But if they chose to pursue it, I think they'd be confounded by this, the way it's presented now in this bill as a prerequisite for being eligible. And maybe you'd comment on that problem.
Yeah, no, I totally can understand that. And I think accommodations should be made. There are probably a lot of charities that fall into that. The only thing I can say is that, 287E requires the list of charities for the reasons that Valerie has said, which is that in that case, only charities can operate bingo. 287D, of course, is different because games of chance, poker rooms, are operated by game operators. So that charity operation requirement is not in that statute. And I totally agree with you. I think that's probably something that needs to be dealt with.
So just a comment in response. My takeaway is that we just need to be careful here. We need to make sure that we're not unintentionally excluding organizations that should be excluded. I think the challenge is to look at both the references to the federal categories for a charitable organization, make sure that we've got that down right, and then use the concept of membership carefully.
Okay. Representative Bromley, followed by Representative Yurley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question for Charlie McIntyre. Have you given any thought to expanding the list of codes here, or a mechanism to formally do exemptions to that list to include other charities?
We have actually, to your point, Representative Brummy, we receive requests from charities that are registered with a charitable trust division of the AG's office, but not registered with Secretary of State's office. And so the answer is yes. So if possible, Mr. Chairman Major, if we could look at the language and respond to it in kind, I think we could clean this up with a redrafting, if that makes sense to you.
We don't have to get the bill out for a while, so we'll have the time to do that.
Okay. So to address that question, as well as Representative Ames's issue regarding membership, which is, I think we've been doing a workaround here in terms of what qualifies as membership, but to further refine it is probably a good idea going forward.
Yeah. So I think by checking with the Secretary of State's office and the Attorney General's office, bringing those types of charities together, so everybody's included. If you can solve that, that's going to help.
Yes, sir.
All right, Representative Yurley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as a suggestion from what Ms. King had just stated, you don't really want a list of members. You just want a list of contact persons. So having just a list of contact persons, using languages to quote unquote authorized persons is what you're looking for. Is that correct?
You want to respond to that, Valerie or Charlie?
Yeah, that's essentially correct. And whether, as has been mentioned earlier, if it were removed from the statute as a requirement, that would be fine, because we can still require in rules that they provide us with a list of people that are authorized to participate.
Yeah.
Very good.
Just to follow up on that, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The problem with that is authorized to participate. Well, what do you mean participate? Because, for example, Bishop Girton runs bingo at one of the halls to collect money for Bishop Girton, and that rotates amongst the parents. So who's an authorized person? It's like Representative Ames's comment about his local charity up there for the town. I mean, we're getting into.
I think we've beaten this to death. We know what the issue is. It needs to be worked out with a solution, and let's wait for that solution.
Thank you, sir.
Anything new, Representative Almy? Representative Almy, you're muted.
Thank you. I did want to bring up something that we haven't discussed yet on the first page, line 16 to 17. What does it mean, or is covered under a group ruling issued by the Internal Revenue Service under the authority of those sections? Would that mean that anybody who wanted to create a scam charity could register themselves with you on saying that you are a Little League or something like that in a small town? And do you use this language, and how do you use this language? This is to Valerie or Charlie.
So the group ruling is really just, they have their IRS, their nonprofit status is under an umbrella. So like Miss America may be the head one, but they have all these other local Miss Americas. So those little ones are under the big one. It's just an affiliation.
Okay. So if the New Hampshire Guns of America, whatever that thing is called, Guns for America, or Every Town Gun Sense, on the New Hampshire group, if they've got a C4, then the New Hampshire group would be considered under their original IRS license. That's all that means.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
We've spent a lot of time on this. We're going to have a work session. and people are gonna come back with some solutions. So anything else? If not, I'm closing. I don't see any other hands. I'm closing the public hearing on Senate Bill 27. And just go back to Senate Bill 22. Senate Bill 22 has the same title. It's, but it just has three, looks like small sections, but a small section could be really big. So I'm going to go into the public hearing on Senate Bill 22. Senate Bill 22. To testify, we have Clark Taylor. He's opposed. Or Clark.
Norm, do you want me to introduce the bill? Someone has to introduce the bill.
What's that?
Someone has to introduce the bill.
All right. Okay. So we don't have a sponsor here. So you want to introduce the bill?
Yeah, I will. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pat Abrami, Rockham 19 Stratham. I'm here to introduce House Bill 22 relative to the sale of Lucky 7 tickets, and will not take questions. Thank you.
Okay. We have two people signed up. One to support the bill and one to oppose. And they're both lobbyists. So why don't Rick Newman's here. Rick, you wanted to testify in support of the bill.
Representative Schamberg has a question.
Before anybody, okay, Representative Schamberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for Director McIntyre. Is he still on the line?
He's still with us.
Thank you, Director McIntyre. For 4 years, I've sat next to Representative Mary Griffin, who has my left ear most of the time. On line 2, says Lucky 7 tickets may be sold by dispenser devices. And then when we go down to lines 15 through 17, does this mean that Representative Griffin's seniors will still be able to get a paper ticket handed to them so that they can open it, close it, whatever they want to do? Or will it just be by the mobile device?
Certainly, that's to the decision of the operator, but dispensers will still be available if the bingo hall still sells that way. There are electronic machines which sell Lucky 7, and there are physical dispensers which dispense Lucky 7 tickets. Very not sophisticated. And so the answer is yes.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Oh.
Director McIntyre, on lines 11 through 13, we've been told that a deal is 3,500 tickets. Now I see the addition, the commission shall not authorize deal sizes over 14,000 tickets. Can you explain this, what this deal means?
Yeah, I mean, it does a few things, right? So whenever you increase the pool size of a game, just think of it like a pyramid. You can increase the top of the pyramid.
Not a good term, but go ahead.
The top prize can be raised. Also, for example, it's a consumer, for us, certainly for me, I think it's a consumer benefit only because if the top prize in an existing deal of $3,500 tickets is $500, and that prize is gone, then in theory, we're offering something to the public for sale that doesn't exist anymore as a top prize. But increasing the deal size allows more prizes of that level to be included in the deal. So, I mean, certainly it's not that significant a change. If you look at a lottery ticket, for example, we have pool sizes that are 5 million, some of our tickets. So the 14,000 is not that large a pool size for a gambling product.
Thank you, Director McIntyre.
Okay, I'm going to have Rick Newman testify first. And Rick Newman is a lobbyist from Grover Gaming in support of the bill. Rick Newman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to clarify, I'm representing the, yes, Grover Gaming on this bill. And I am testifying in support. First thing I'd like to ask the committee to focus on is this bill deals with a different universe of charities than you have dealt with, for instance, when you were dealing with historic racing. This bill deals with charities that sell Lucky 7 tickets. Those are primarily sold in New Hampshire at clubs, at places like VFWs, American Legions, Elks Clubs, those kinds of places. There are about 11 or 12 commercial bingo halls in New Hampshire that also sell Lucky 7 tickets. But there are over 200 other locations, such as what I just mentioned, where Lucky 7 tickets are sold. So so it's a different universe of charities. The first change in the current law is relative to electronic dispensing devices. The current law requires that in every case, a ticket must be printed. This bill would allow that to be an option. This is important to the charities because the rolls of paper that print those tickets cost money. That money is paid for by the charities, and if it can be made optional, it will be less cost. The fact of the matter is, people who play electronic dispensing devices simply don't care whether a ticket is printed or not. They don't look at those tickets. They can see the results on the screen, on the video monitor, and the winnings are kept track on the video monitor. So they don't need the ticket to cash out. They don't look at the ticket, and they don't need the ticket to know whether they won. It is really a waste of time. I will point out to you, for instance, this past summer, there was literally a time when the paper that is required for these machines was simply not available because of COVID. The manufacturer had shut down. There's only one manufacturer that makes this double-sided roll of paper that's required in these machines. And so it created a problem for charities throughout the state because the paper was simply not available. Making it optional makes sense for the environment, makes sense for charities. So I urge you to consider that. This is a requirement in the statute that is simply not needed. The other change that's made here is that this is actually a twofold change. You've asked a lot about the 3,500 ticket maximum in deals, how that's currently provided for. The current statute says that the lottery decides how big the deals are. So if lottery tomorrow wanted to change the current 3,500 maximum deal size to 14,000 or 50,000, the current statute gives them that authority. This change puts that authority back in the hands of the legislature by maximizing the deal size at 14,000 that lottery can approve. If at any time there was an effort to go beyond 14,000, it would require further legislative action. So I would point out that I think is a benefit. And the question of why 14,000 is chosen, I will tell you is this. Under the current rules set by lottery, each charity, as I said, has a maximum deal size they can use of 3,500, but they are allowed to commingle 4 deals in one box, whether that's a physical box at an American Legion where 4 deals are put together in a box or in a mechanical dispensing device, or whether that's an electronic game where the electronic game can choose from 4 separate deals at the same time. So a total of 14,000 tickets are currently allowed to be commingled, if you will, by making the ability to have a deal size at 14,000, as Mr. McIntyre said, you increase the amount of prizes available, which we obviously believe will attract more players. So that's the reason for that request. And one final thing I will say is in the Senate added, if you recall last year, you changed the ticket price maximum from 50 cents to $1. That stays the same in this bill. You also had a requirement that said, if you're going to sell $1 ticket, you have to have a 50-cent ticket available. For Representative Griffin wanted that, and we certainly supported it. You folks put it in the law. But inadvertently, the language meant that no longer could 25-cent tickets be sold. So the Senate added 25-cent tickets to that requirement as well. So if you want to sell $1 ticket, you have to have a 25-cent ticket or a 50-cent ticket available as well for the offered to the public. We support that as well. We'd ask your support for this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Any further questions? Representative Bromley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Newman, bring us back in time. The Lucky Seven, especially for the new members, was something that was, the machines were never voted in by the House or the Senate. And was it the courts? Refresh my memory. Was it the courts that said that these machines were okay? And was it the courts that said that a piece of paper needed to come out the bottom of the machine, even though no one looks at it?
It was not, and actually, Representative Rami, it was not the court. Believe it was legislation passed, I'm thinking 2010 or 11, that authorized the commission, of course, that was the old commission, to allow these machines, provided that they adopted rules. And in that language in the statute, that statute required the paper ticket to be dispensed. The court got involved because at the time, the Racing and Charitable Gaming Commission decided not to promulgate rules. And a manufacturer sued the commission, and the court said the statute clearly mandated that the commission had to promulgate rules. That was the court involvement. And the Supreme Court upheld that Superior Court ruling. And eventually the commission did promulgate rules. And I believe it was around 2014 or 15 that these electronic devices began to be used in New Hampshire, along with the handheld paper tickets.
And a follow-up.
A follow-up.
And the history is that they wanted to simulate. What's the history of the paper? Why the paper coming out the bottom? Was that to simulate the hand pull tabs or something that people wanted?
That's correct. The idea was that the electronic device would dispense in addition to showing on the screen, it would dispense a paper ticket that the customer, the player, would hold that ticket in their hand the way they do, sitting at the bar at the American Legion or something. But what we've come to realize is that that's simply not what happens. We literally throw away virtually every one of those tickets in every place that uses them. At the end of the night, no customer takes that ticket to the window. No customer looks at that ticket. It is a big pile of wasted paper at the end of the day.
Thank you. I'm all set, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Representative Ames.
Yeah, I can't help myself. I need to ask this question, and it follows from Representative Abrami digging into the history of these provisions. And there's the language that's repeated in this bill. It's not new language. It has to be in there because of the change elsewhere. But this is the language that I want to ask Mr. Newman about. The legislation says, and this is already in the statute, that any permitted Lucky 7 device, quote, shall not be in the nature of a slot machine, unquote. So my question to Mr. Newman is, can you tell me what that means?
Yes, I believe, I can tell you what I believe it means. I'm not sure I'm the definitive, resource, but my understanding of that is that it cannot be slot machine, and that it cannot operate on a random number generator with unlimited amount of prizes. Lucky 7, electronic Lucky 7 devices, as you know, are limited to the number of tickets available in each deal. In this case, 3,500. If it went to 14,000, still be that limitation. So under no circumstance could you ever win more than $3,500 right now, because, and that would be if you gave away all the money taken in. Whereas with a slot machine, of course, you can win an unlimited amount of money. And the other thing is, the other significant difference between a slot machine and a Lucky 7 dispensing device is that a Lucky 7 dispensing device dispenses a ticket in a predetermined order. There's already, ticket number 122 is going to be a $5 winner. And it makes no difference. Nothing can change that. A ticket number 187 is going to be a loser. Nothing can change that. It's a matter of who happens to buy that ticket, which of course is incredible, very much different than the way a slot machine operates.
A follow-up?
Follow-up.
Thank you. That's helpful. It's good to have that background put out into the hearing. My follow-up question comes from your pointing out that the tickets are in a predetermined order in the deal, which means that you inevitably reach a point where the remaining tickets to be played have no winners among them. So that people who are playing from that point forward, although they don't know it, have zero chance of winning. Is that true? And is there any way to abort a game when it's reached that point?
I believe that is true, Representative. Just as right now, if you walk into a VFW or Legion, right, there might be 70 tickets left in the box of tickets to buy, and there may be no winners left in that box, and nobody, the customer, wouldn't necessarily know that. And I would go back to what Mr. McIntyre said. That's one of the advantages of increasing the deal sizes, that you have more opportunities to have winners in the deal. Now, could there still be a time when there are no winners left to play with no one knowing that? Absolutely, that's true. And I'm not sure there's a way to change that, given the nature of the way Lucky 7 tickets are, and that they have a predetermined amount of winners in the deal.
Okay, we'll leave it at that unless Director McIntyre wishes to add to the
Let me ask you a question first. That somebody that doesn't understand this, in a deal, how many of these 3,500 are winners?
Well, that depends on whether it's in the paper games. I'm going to give you an approximations, Representative. My understanding is in your paper ticket games, the ones that a bartender would sell you a ticket, or that the volunteer would sell you a ticket at the table at a bingo game, those operate on about a 75% payback. Most of them, they're not all, but most of them. So about 75% of the money goes back in prizes. In the electronic games, it's about 90% of the money goes back in prizes.
But that doesn't answer my question. What's the number of winners in a group of 3,500?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wouldn't be able to know that. It would really depend on each game is approved by the lottery. So the game has a mix of winners, some 50-cent winners, $1 winners, a $499 winner. I know they try to make as many potential winning tickets as possible because that's how you keep people continuing to play. But I couldn't give you an exact number.
Charlie, do you know the answer to that?
I mean, certainly my sense would be it's probably 1 in 5 tickets wins, but Val, are you on still?
Valerie, do you know the answer?
As Rick said, there's no standard because every game is going to be different, but I think Charlie's right. It's usually around 1 in 5.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Elmy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one question for Rick on, can you tell us what Grover Gaming is? Is this the place that produces the machines or what?
Sure. Grover Gaming is a manufacturer of electronic Lucky 7 dispensing devices. They produce the machines.
We have one other person who wants to testify. Any further questions for Rick Newman? Seeing none, Tyler Clark. I believe you've been promoted.
Good morning, Chairman Major. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Chairman Major and members of the committee. I will apologize in advance. I have to work from home because we had a flood at our office. So I'm looking at my dog who's asleep right now, and he is a ticking time bomb in case there is a gust of wind. So if he starts to bark, I'm sorry. But I did send the committee a list of links last night that hopefully, and most of them are videos, but hopefully they provide some clarity as to the products that we're discussing today. There is a link to what a machine in New Hampshire looks like, and various links that show you the type of paper tickets that are offered at bingo events in fraternal halls.
And you're speaking in opposition, right?
I am. That's correct, sir. And also at the bottom of that email is a link to all of the approved games from the Lottery Commission. So you can see, to answer your question, Chairman Major, the amount of winners in each game, because it is a list of all the games that have been approved and their payouts and the amount of winners and how the game is played is in that link. So Diamond Distributors is located in Maltenburg, New Hampshire, and we're one of the leading distributors of paper Lucky 7 tickets in our state. These are the tickets sold in conjunction with bingo games. Diamond services over 80 Granite State charities with Lucky 7 tickets and bingo supplies. We are on the front lines of New Hampshire's bingo industry, an industry which has helped New Hampshire charities fundraise for decades. And I will say, while fraternals also offer these tickets, bingos can be run in 2 ways. They can be run by the charity itself. For example, the Plastow Gun Club has a function room on the 2nd floor. So that club actually runs bingo on their own with their members. But for charities that do not have the benefit of having their own space, they rent out a space at a commercial hall. So Diamond Distributors opposes Senate Bill 22, and we respectfully request that this bill is moved to ITL. In prior years, we've heard testimony stating the requirement to dispense a paper ticket from a Lucky 7 dispenser device is cumbersome, but this ticket is what differentiates these bright, flashy devices from an electronic gaming machine. Currently, there are Lucky 7 dispensing devices in facilities that to the untrained eye resemble slot machines. These devices offer bright screens, moving graphics, sound effects, autoplay features, short intervals between each play, bonus spins, and fractional payouts. RSA 287E21 states, as it was pointed out by Representative Ames, any permitted Lucky 7 device shall not be in the nature of a slot machine. And to invoke the words of a former colleague of mine who has since retired and used to testify before this committee, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's in the nature of a duck. Without the ticket being dispensed, these machines will further blur the line between Lucky 7 dispensing devices and electronic gaming machines. There is also no guarantee this proposal will provide cost savings or increased revenues to charities. There is no language in Senate Bill 22 that states any savings from the removal or option of the dispensed tickets will be passed down from the manufacturers, distributors, and bingo consultants who sell, operate, and promote these machines. There's also concern with increasing the maximum size of a deal from 3,500 to 14,000 tickets. We sell our products to charities who hold legitimate bingos, advertise these bingos, and draw a crowd. At these events, the most common paper ticket deals sold are around 1,750 tickets. 3,500 ticket deals are less frequently purchased due to their size. A 3,500 ticket deal is even more difficult to sell during the COVID era where social distancing is required and event occupancy is limited. It is highly unlikely a charity operating a real bingo would purchase paper deals larger than 3,500 tickets. The increased size of deals would solely benefit those who promote Lucky 7 machines and will potentially hurt charities who run legitimate bingos. Charities raise significantly more money from paper deals than electronic deals. Paper games have varying payouts, but they average a payout of 70 to 75% to the players and leave the remaining 25 to 30% to the charity. This is in comparison to the machines, which pay out roughly 90% to players and leaves 10% for charities. In fact, charities that run bingo in facilities that also offer these machines feel it causes them to lose revenue. It should also be noted that facilities can have both a Games of Chance license plus a bingo and Lucky 7 license. Having the bingo license allows Games of Chance facilities to operate Lucky 7 machines. Considering these machines are not limited to being solely in the room where bingo is conducted, this then gives these facilities a product that creates a casino vibe. Lucky 7 machines can be found in hallways and rooms throughout a facility. This has led to what is called ghost bingo. Ghost bingo is where there is an intent to hold a bingo game, but it doesn't come to fruition due to a lack of players. The intent to hold a bingo game then allows these machines to operate from noon to 1 a.m. This past summer, the legislature raised the maximum price of a Lucky 7 ticket from 50 cents to $1. Through rulemaking, Lucky 7 dispensing devices had their rate of play increased from 5 seconds to every 3 seconds. Hypothetically, a player can now insert $20 into a Lucky 7 dispensing device, turn on the autoplay function, and the machine will play 20 times in 1 minute. Diamond Distributors respectfully request the committee reject further changes to Lucky 7 dispensing devices. The changes proposed in this bill further blur the line between a dispensing device and an electronic gaming device. We feel it would be prudent to allow the state to observe how increased tickets and play have helped or hindered the sales and revenues raised for the state. We're also very encouraged to see the committee unanimously pass a bill to study charitable gaming. Since the proliferation of charitable casinos, we feel the bingo and Lucky 7 industry is now often overlooked and would welcome further study on issues related to Lucky 7 and bingo. And I thank you for your time this morning and the opportunity to testify before the committee.
Thank you for your testimony. Take questions. Mr. Clark, would you take questions?
Yes, I would.
Representative Bromley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Clark, for your testimony. I would imagine that there's one provision in this bill that you would support that you didn't talk about, and that would be Section 3, the adding back of the 25-cent ticket, manual ticket. Is that a correct thought?
You know, we as a business don't sell too many 25-cent tickets. But the way I do read this legislation is that it's actually a mandate for charities to buy these deals. So if somebody offers a $1 ticket at their bingo or, you know, at their fraternal, then it's stating that the charity shall also offer 25-cent and 50-cent tickets. So I read that as a mandate. We're pretty neutral on that aspect of the bill, but I would just point that out to the committee.
Curious. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Yeah.
Representative Ames.
Sorry, I didn't have my hand up, but fortunately I was unmuted, at least for me. My question is really whether we'll have the written statement, or maybe it's been sent to us last night that it was just delivered. It'd be good to have it in hand.
Mr. Clark, did you send us last night what you read this morning?
I did not send a copy last night. I figured I would save it. I had a couple edits to make this morning. I was taught when drafting something, you should always make a first draft and then sleep on it and read it the next day, but I'm happy to send it over after this hearing.
Please.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Mail it to the full committee.
I will.
Then I don't have to worry about mailing it. Representative Elmy.
Thank you. This is not to Mr. Clark, but to Charlie. And so if it's not time for that yet, I'll wait.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Thank you. Charlie, you told us that these machines are operating now, the electronic, to you in your first comment to Representative Schamberg, that the existing electronic machines do not dispense. The law is very clearly written at this point that they must dispense, and that and it was written that way in order to differentiate them from slot machines, make the play somewhat slower, and allow people to these machines were allowed in the first place simply as dispensing machines, not as electronic gaming machines, for the convenience of the various fraternal halls. And it seems that they have already become electronic gaming machines that maybe as or more on like slot machines than the ones that were just approved for historic racing, and that are going into a lot of fraternal organizations that
I have a question.
This is my question. Is this true?
No, sorry, but Representative Valmy, if I misspoke, I apologize. No, the machines that are in place all dispense a paper ticket.
They do, but they also allow, I guess we didn't specify that, they allow you to find out that you have won or lost just by having on a large bell ring on the screen. Thank you.
Representative Brandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question's for Charlie or Valerie. So the 3,500 ticket, it doesn't exist. The 35 and for the electronic machines, the 3,500 tickets, what I thought I heard, doesn't really exist in statute, but it is a common number that is used in a play, I guess you would call it that. But it was also said that some establishments, probably the larger ones, will take 4 boxes of these 3,500 tickets and combine them and load them into the machine, it sounds like, so that the 1,400 already exists. Can you give us a sense of, first off, can you explain that a little bit more? And two, how many of the locations actually will group different, 4 boxes together to create a larger play?
Val, if you can answer that?
Yeah, so the 3,500 is not set in statute, but it is set by rule. In the rules, we limit it to 3,500. We also allow commingling, which means you would take 4 separate deals, put them in a bowl together, mix them up and sell them at once, rather than one deal, then the next deal, then the next deal. They're all sort of blended together and sold at one time. That's what commingling is. And that can be up to 4 deals, which is 14,000 tickets.
Right.
But they're actually 4 separate deals, just mixed together.
A follow-up then.
Follow-up.
Would that apply? 'Cause it sounded like you were just talking about the single tickets, not the machine tickets. But does that also apply to the electronic Lucky 7 machines?
Yeah, so the same thing would apply in a machine. They would just, instead of having one deal sell out at a time, it would take 1 ticket from one deal, another ticket from the next deal, another ticket from the next deal. And so they have 4 deals playing at once, and the player's not sure which deal they're going to get the ticket from. That helps prevent people from jackpot hunting, where they'll stop playing a deal because it's hit the jackpot. This way, by mixing them up, it continues the play and the interest in continuing to play.
One more follow-up, please.
One more follow-up, then we gotta move on.
I know, Valerie, so when they load these machines, they don't load pieces of paper in there, right? Or are they it's electronically loaded? The 3500 is an electronic thing that gets loaded?
They could do it manually, but the ones that we currently have, they've all evolved, and I believe all of them now are electronically loaded in from the cloud.
Okay, that's just clarification in my mind. I just want to understand. Thank you.
Representative Gamalo, then we have one more person that showed up, wants to testify. Representative Gamalo.
I just wanted to tell you that there's a Fran Wendelbowl that signed up late and she's ready in the attendees.
Right, I have an email that was sent to me this morning before 8 o'clock, so let her in.
Okay. If you're on a phone, it's *6 to unmute.
She's on, I don't know.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Took me a minute on the cell phone how to figure out how to do the *6.
Now,
thank you for.
Glenn, are you testifying for or against?
I am testifying for.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. For the record, Fran Wendelbow, I represent Powerhouse Gaming. I'm actually in support of all of the charitable gaming bills that are being heard today, 22, 23, 25, and 27. But I specifically want to talk to Senate Bill 22. I think what we need to remember is that the charitable gaming was terribly impacted by COVID, and were shut down, and they're really behind the ball, so to speak, on their fundraising for the charitable works that they do. As you've already heard, you have various service organizations like the VFWs and the Legion and all the good work they do, but you also have sports teams and scholarship funds. And so all of those entities are hurting. And this legislation, particularly where it talks about the option of not having a paper ticket, that directly is paid for by the charities. They pay for the purchase of the ticket. And the tickets that the electronic machines use, with having to be the double, the double ticket, is very expensive. And if you go and you watch people playing electronic machines, you'll see the receipts coming out and just piling up on the floor. Hardly anybody actually picks up the ticket because they already know if they won or lost from looking on the screen, which is great because people like me that have bad eyesight or have arthritis in their hands, you're not dealing with squinting at little writing. So it's a great advantage for people to use the electronic that are handicapped. But anyway, it would save the charities a lot of money and add to their profitability, having the cost of the paper heavily discounted by not many people printing them. The other issue is that the housekeeping measures of this is just cleaning up. There's nothing new happening. The commingling with the size of the deal has been going on for quite some time. So there's really no impact there, but it certainly gives a lot more flexibility. And just bear in mind, I don't know how many facilities that you've heard from. As we all know, it's difficult to get volunteers together for these things. And so sometimes it's difficult to motivate them to, contact the committee members and so on. So I think that hits the highlight of the advantages of Senate Bill 22. We're not expanding, we're not doing anything that hasn't, been under existing law. the bag and box issue, again, is just catching up with technology and the way these things are printed. So I do hope that the committee supports this. I thank you for allowing me. I don't know if anybody heard, but I had a 10 o'clock emergency dental appointment. And when you walk into the dentist and say, make it fast, I was out of the chair in 15 minutes. So I hope to actively participate in the subcommittee. And I'm so glad that you guys are hearing this so early so that there is time to iron out the little snags instead of just saying, oh, let's throw it into study, because these bills tend to get thrown into study and then they never get really taken up again. So I'm glad that you have the time to accommodate giving it any extra attention it needs to clarify things.
Time today, though. Go ahead.
Right. All right. So thank you for my testimony being allowed, and I look forward to working with the committee to get these bills passed. Thank you.
Would you take questions?
I certainly will.
Representative Ames.
Yeah, good morning, and you're sounding amazingly vigorous in spite of your dental emergency.
Thank you.
So you spoke about the monetary difficulties or the loss of charitable gaming revenue that you've seen. And I wonder if you could help me understand that, quantify it in terms of this year versus previous years. What's the trend that was if there was a trend before this past year, before COVID, and what's happened in this most recent year, where you've indicated there's been difficulties.
Representative Ames, thank you for that question. I will really need to defer to Valerie because they were totally shut most of the year. Obviously, there's been a big decrease. So those statistics are kept by lottery, and it's not general access. They have to go and create a report to give them to individuals. So perhaps Valerie can give you an idea of what has happened this year versus the last year.
Valerie, you have an answer?
I have to admit I was distracted. What was the question?
Trying to get a handle on the on charitable gaming revenues. The testimony is that there's been a significant loss during the COVID period, and so I'm asking for two things actually. What was happening before COVID hit to charitable gaming revenues? Was there a trend up or down? And then what has happened since then?
So charitable gaming, there are three different types. Games of chance has been pretty steadily upward. Bingo is not, it's continuing to languish, I guess you'd say. You know, it's not getting better, but it's not necessarily getting worse. But COVID did shut down a lot of the bingo halls, so there has been less revenue at the bingo halls. Lucky 7, I'd have to look at the numbers, but my assumption is that Lucky 7 has taken a slight dip as well because there are fewer game halls open.
Okay, can you get numbers to us, the best numbers you have, both for that before period of time and after,
Yes.
broken out into those three categories that you've just mentioned: bingo, Lucky 7, and what else? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
Whatever,
I can do that.
Whatever works for you.
Well,
The best information available.
So that's information for before the pandemic and after and during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay. Representative Elmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we add to that on you seem to be keeping records of which halls were open and which weren't. How many? If you've got it, how many games of chance halls closed for how much time? How many bingo halls, and how many you said lucky 7 halls? So you seem to be distinguishing between the ones that are only machines with no bingo and the bingo halls. Thank you.
We don't necessarily track that. We do keep, when people have licenses, when the rooms have a license and the games, but we don't have that readily available. We'd have to go through some of our data and compile it.
Okay, so this, I can just take that as an impression that the lucky 7 halls were, less of them were open, both the bingo and the lucky 7 halls were closing.
Yeah, a lot of the lucky 7 are fraternal halls, and a lot of them were closed completely.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Anybody else wish to testify for or against Senate Bill 22? And I thought that was going to be an easy bill. All right, since none, I'm closing the public hearing on Senate Bill 22. Why don't we just take a 5-minute break before we get to the next? It is now 10:47. We'll be back at 10:52. Okay. Well, I'm waiting for the others. Edith, how you doing? Representative Tucker. How are you doing? Oops.
Fine.
Yeah.
Representative Major, it looks like Representative Malloy has now joined us. Not on the phone, but in
Hey,
person.
good to see you, Dennis. Representative Malloy. Yeah. All right. It is 10:53. I want to open the public hearing on Senate Bill 23, an act changing the requirements that a member of the sponsoring charitable organization be present during certain games of chance. I have the testifying sheet, and there's Senator Sherman, who is the sponsor, is signed up to testify and to speak, and Senator French is in support but not speaking, and that's the list of speakers. Let me just take a look at attendees. I don't see any attendees. So is Senator Sherman here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the members of the committee. I am here to introduce Senate Bill 23. For the record, I am Senator Tom Sherman, State Senator for District 24, which is 11 towns on the Seacoast. Senate Bill 23, the concept was brought to me by one of my constituents. As you know, we have two charitable, or at least two charitable gaming operations in my district. The concept or the current statute, whenever a charitable organization is signed up for charitable gaming, for example, if a group had a 4-day run at the Brook, currently they would have to sign an affidavit. They'd have to show up in person and sign an affidavit on every day that the organization is participating at the Brook or whichever facility they are doing. There is gaming going on their behalf. SB 23 was at the request of one of these charitable organizations because they found that they could not fully participate in all of the days due to the logistics of trying to get someone there to actually sign the affidavit. In doing a little background on this, I spoke to the chair of the Lottery Commission, and the point was made that this was actually a fairly archaic and outdated requirement that went back to the days when charitable organizations organized all of their own gaming. So that when the gaming is actually done by another organization, such as the Brook, that this is just a perfunctory process. There is really no justification for continuing it. My original bill, just to hold on, I guess a toehold of this, was to have the charitable organization at least show up once during the 4 days. It was pointed out that while that's a huge improvement over the current situation, it still might mean they have to go across state, miss work in order to actually sign up. And Senate Ways and Means amended the bill to pull out any requirement of having to show up, allowing the charitable organization to participate fully without having to be present during that period of time, which I fully support. So that's the bill. That's what it does. It's pretty simple, and I hope you will support its passage. Thank you.
Thank you for the testimony. Would you take questions?
Absolutely.
Representative Elmy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Sherman. I understand what the need is for what you're trying to do, but there are 4 sections right immediately after the one that you're repealing that say that the charitable organization is going to be on figuring out handling the money, handling who's there, all sorts of things like that. And did you look at those to try to, and how is that handled now? Because I do know that the charitable organizations finesse these things somehow, sometimes at this point. If the question of how it's handled now might be better answered by Valerie. Thank you.
I agree that Valerie would probably be better at answering that. What my understanding is that the only purpose of this person showing up once a day is to sign an affidavit. They're not handling any money. They're not handling anything. In fact, there is a prohibition against them even participating in the gaming. So they may cross the state to sign in. They would have to do it every day. So this one component of that chapter is the one that they are finding so onerous.
If I may just thank you, bring it out. On section Roman 12 says the charitable organization shall deposit cash and proceeds from the game of chance into the account required under this chapter. And on someone is going to be paying all expenses by check, it's inferred that it's the charitable organization. And on 13 isn't applying, but on 15 says that the games of chance where chips have no monetary face value, the charitable organization may offer any number of games per licensed event. And 16 says the charitable organization may offer 1 game per licensed event in which each player may spend up to $250. There are a number of places throughout this section of the statute that on 19 also that and 20 that talk about the charitable organization's responsibilities. And I'm not sure how this fits together with them not showing up at all, and hope that we can figure that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that a question or?
Yes. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, my understanding in speaking with the chairman of the commission that this would not impact those because the role of this person showing up is simply to sign the affidavit. They don't have any other role other than that. So the rest of it, it might be a good topic for the commission that was discussed with the last 2 bills, looking at charitable gaming, whether these are still pertinent. But the role of the person showing up to sign the affidavit is solely to sign the affidavit, in my understanding. And that is what is onerous for the organizations, many of whom have no permanent staff, have no officers to go over, except people who are also working. So they have to take time off from work, they have to travel, none of which is reimbursed. So that was the goal. But I agree with you that there are some concerns potentially later on in the statute, but I don't believe that this impacts them.
Valerie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, so I just wanted to clarify that he is correct. That the affidavit is from years ago when the charities did run their own games, and this was sort of as they started to switch to game operator employers who are much more savvy at how to run games properly. they continued the charity's participation through the affidavit, but it really doesn't provide any assurances about it has nothing to do with the gaming integrity. It's really just, they go in, they sign a piece of paper. They don't accept any money. They aren't doing anything other than saying, yep, we're here. And yes, this game night is our night. So we have no objections to having that removed, and because it really doesn't serve any purpose as far as our needs to ensure the integrity of the games. As far as paying checks and depositing money, we do require, because the statute does say that all licensees have to have a criminal background check. So we do require whoever's accepting that money on behalf of the charity, it's usually the chairman or the treasurer, does have to have a criminal background check. They would pick up the money and deposit it into the charity's bank account.
Thank you. Any further questions? I don't see any further questions. There is a hand. Whoops, Representative Almy.
Thank you. This is a follow-up to Valerie. So the treasurer of the association of the organization has to travel to this place to pick up the money and count it and take it to their bank account?
No, not necessarily. It's typically, there's no requirement that they physically go to the location, but they're the ones who are accepting and depositing the money. It has to be the chairman or the treasurer or designee, but they may do it other ways. We don't require that they go in person to pick up the check.
Representative Elliott. You're muted, Bob.
Okay. I just wanted to say hi to Tom Sherman. I don't have a question. I hope you're well, Tom. Keep up the good
Thank you, Representative. Great to see you, as well as all the other friends on this Zoom. It's great to see everybody.
Okay. Any further questions of Senator Sherman?
Rick Newman has his hand up in the attendees.
Okay, let him in, but Representative Almy, you have a further?
Yeah, this is essentially a question to Senator Sherman, if he would mind if we try to clean up this language, because you may call it archaic, but it was put in by Representative Weiler when he got Charitable Gaming established about a decade ago. A lot of it does put responsibilities on the charitable organization, which the charitable organization, I don't think, should be responsible for, because they are not involved in this operation except to receive money. Thank you.
If I can answer that, I would be more than happy to have the bill, as often happens when our bills come to the House, have it improved. And the only thing I would ask is that, and I didn't mean any offense by calling it archaic, maybe vestigial is better. But the only thing I would ask is that we keep intact the original intent, which is this bill enjoys the support of both the charitable organizations as well as the charitable gaming operators, because it removes something that, as Valerie said, really serves no purpose. And but any other changes that you want to make that would be supported by the commission and the committee I would more than welcome them.
Valerie, you have your hands up.
Yes, I just wanted to give some assurances to Representative Almy regarding some of the other requirements in the statute that are on the charitable organization. Charitable organizations technically can run their own games of chance events. Most of them don't, because it's very complicated and onerous. When they hire a game operator employer to run those games on their behalf, those requirements shift to the game operator employer who is doing the operation on behalf of the charity.
Very good. All right, Janine, would you let me see,
Yes,
Rick Newman and
Newman has talking permission.
Mr. Newman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will briefly, I tried to sign up for this and I apologize. I guess I didn't do it correctly, but I briefly,
For or against the bill?
speaking in favor of the bill,
Thank you.
on behalf of the New Hampshire Charitable Gaming Operators Association. And just two quick points I want to make. Many of our rooms have run into the situation where a charity, wanted to participate in charitable gaming, but because they were located or their members were located so far from the room, it became impossible to let them operate because you couldn't get somebody who could drive, in some cases 30, 40 miles, every single day round trip to come in. And I do want to reiterate what Valerie said. What we're talking about here is a person drives to Belmont, appears at the front desk, is handed a piece of paper, signs it, it says, I'm here, and then literally walks out the door. They don't have any further involvement. The statute doesn't require any further involvement. And so it really is a requirement that's run its course and does impede certain charities from being able to participate. On the issue that a good point that Representative Almy raised about the statute referring to the responsibilities of the charity, again, I just would reiterate the statute does say that when a charity hires a game operator employer, those responsibilities now become the responsibility of the game operator employer. So the game operator employer does all of those things on behalf of the charity and deposits the money in a separate account each day, et cetera. But one final thing, I will tell you that when this law was originally passed, the requirement was a charity had to be present all day long. And that was changed to the just show up and sign a paper. And frankly, I think, even that's run its course. So we would support this change and ask that you support the bill.
Any questions of Rick Newman? I see no hands up. Is there anybody else in the attendee list, Janine? Anybody else want to ask
Nope.
questions? Then I'm going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 23. Now we're going to make a little change to Senate Bill 25. I got a call from Senator Morse. He's the sponsor and the only sponsor on this Senate Bill 25, and he asked if I would introduce it since he's tied up with the governor this morning. So I'm going to have Representative Abromney take over as chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 25 relative to charitable gaming licenses. And I think Representative Major is going to introduce the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Representative Norm Major, representing Rockingham 14 towns of Atkinson and Plastow. I'm here at the request of Senator Morse, and which he explained this is a straightforward bill requested by a constituent of his to streamline the administration of charitable gaming. Under current law, charities may operate games of chance 10 times per year. Senate Bill 25 doesn't change this. Currently, these 10 days are reset on the anniversary when the license was issued. This date is different for every charity. So the groups running the games on their behalf must track the anniversary dates for every single charity, which is very administrative nightmare. Senate Bill 25 resets the clock on December 31st for everyone. Each licensed charity gets 10 days during the calendar year, the same as before. This is a simple change that will make it easier to administer charitable gaming in New Hampshire, and the senator asks for your support. Thank you.
Any questions for Representative Major? Well, okay, I see none. Oh, yes, Representative Almy.
Simply, this bill is within Senate Bill 27, Senator Gaida's bill. On how do we handle that?
Well, if Senator Gaida's bill gets tied up in work sessions and is retained, then this goes forward. This is simple. This doesn't have the baggage as the other bill does.
Follow up.
Could I have a follow-up then?
Yes, follow up.
Do you have an explanation from him as to why they picked 2 years? Oh no, this one doesn't affect the 1 year versus 2 year issue. I beg your pardon.
This is a simple bill. It doesn't change the number of games. It doesn't change the licensing. But it says the licensing terminates the 31st of December. And you have to renew it every year. And when you do, you're going to get your 10 days. Where it is now, the 10 days starts at the date that you get your license. And when you have to keep track of all the various charities, it's much more difficult than it is if everybody has to start at January 1.
Okay, any other questions for Representative Major? I don't see any.
Valerie is here, so they may be able to.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Valerie in a second. I just want to, Representative Major. So Jenny, as of 8 o'clock this morning, there was no one else on the list to speak. Do you see anybody out there that wants to speak?
Rick Newman has his hand up.
Okay, let me ask, can we let him in? And I'm going to ask Valerie King a question. Valerie, can you just embellish why having all these different dates currently is a problem and why going to the one date would help you out?
Prior to a few years ago, it was the single date. It was the licenses are good for a calendar year. That got changed a few years ago because of one constituent, but it really wreaked havoc with the rest of us. So having it converted back to the old way does make it a lot easier for the rooms to follow their charities' license dates, and it equally makes our lives a little easier here in the lottery.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Valerie King?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Representative Ames, yes.
This is indirectly related, but we're talking about the number of days here. We're actually just changing the time of the license, but the license allows the charity to operate games of chance for 10 days, which 10 days need not be consecutive. The question arises because we've got another bill that we've sent to the floor involving historic horse racing gaming, and specifying that for every day of operation of those games, there must be 2 charitable organizations participating. Is there any potential for confusion between those 2 different rules that may apply to the same gaming place?
No, there won't be any issues with regard to having two charities play at once. This actually makes it a little easier because you can keep the same two charities at the same time. They'll all be licensed the same time period. They can coordinate it a little easier, I think. The historic horse racing requirement won't have any impact.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of Valerie King? Okay, seeing none. Rick Newman, you'd like to testify? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick Newman, speaking in favor of the bill, representing the New Hampshire Charitable Gaming Operators Association. Just very briefly, I will tell you that when the change took place, all of our rooms saw a lot of logistical problems. It just is a difficult thing to keep track of whose license expires when. And as Ms. King said, it was a change that was asked for by one organization because they had misunderstood when their license expired. It was done as an amendment to a Senate bill a few years ago. Nobody saw it. And when we realized what happened, we realized then it was going to be a problem, and it has turned out to be a problem. This is a good, simple change that will help not only the lottery, but the game operators as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Newman. Any questions for Mr. Newman? I don't see any hands. Jenny, are there any other folks out there that want to testify? You see any other hands?
No, we're all set.
Okay. So any other questions of the members? Okay, seeing none, I think we'll going to close the hearing on House Bill 25. Representative Major, you back in the chair seat?
Thank you, Pat.
See how quick I can do it? Just joking.
Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing on Senate Bill 48 relative to the formula used to determine current use tax rates. And the testifying sheet shows there's 3 people on a spake. The prime sponsor is Bob Geider. He's here. The next is Jason Stock, a lobbyist in support. And then Robert Johnson, a lobbyist, New Hampshire Farm Bureau, also in support. So Senator Geider, go ahead and introduce your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Bob Geider, State Senator, District 2, and prime sponsor of Senate Bill 48. This bill was, the topic of this bill was pointed out to me by a person who is very active in issues of property taxation and so forth. It is a part of our legislation that is, I find, repugnant. As you know, on Ways and Means, every formula for every tax that is levied on our citizens and businesses is a matter of public record, with one exception, and that is the formula that's utilized to determine the current use property taxation. This was the result inadvertently of the blanket confidentiality that is issued to anything that has to do with the Department of Revenue Administration, under which the current use board resides. And so having spoken with the Commissioner of Revenue, and she and the department are totally with this bill. And in the interest of maintaining, if you will, transparency in government, one of the things that we all find very, very compelling, this bill is brought in just to remove the components of the formula and the formula itself from the confidentiality blanket that's issued to all DRA regulations. And so all it does is it adds under D, under RSA 21J:14 Roman 4, it inserts one additional thing that is exempted from the confidentiality. And that's the formula used by the department to assist the current use board in the determination of current use tax rates and all variables within that formula, including definition of those variables, if any. There are private properties that are utilized in determination of the level of taxation. That information will remain totally confidential, but the formula itself cries out to be, as all other taxation formulas are, available to the public without any infringement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for the senator? Representative Bromley.
Thank you, Senator Goddard. This is funny. When I first read this bill yesterday, my reaction was, where's the formula? And I kept on searching for the formula and I couldn't. And the bill is to do what you just said. So I think this is a good idea to let everybody be able to see the formula. More of a comment than anything else. Thank you.
Representative Elmy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Gaida, I believe that this formula is also invisible to those of us who have land which is not in current use, but which is under deed restriction by the planning boards, and from developments that were created subdivisions. And I wonder, would this also, it would, I believe, apply to them. As far as I know, this concerns entirely timberland, which is in current use and every now and then is harvested. And in my case, we harvested my association's timberland over a decade, 2 decades ago now, and had to pay the timber tax, but had no idea how much we were going to have to pay when we started and when we hired somebody to do it, so that you can't tell whether you're going to make a profit or a loss. We were quite surprised to discover we were making a profit, 30% of which went to the town. So is that what this is about? And would it also, would opening up this formula for current use also apply to the formula? It would be the same formula, wouldn't it, for subdivisions that had deed restrictions?
Yeah, I think the intent of the legislation is to make the formula transparent to any who would use it or just be interested in looking at it. Again, it's repugnant, I think, to our ethics that a taxation formula is hidden. And it's the only one of its kind in the state. Everything else, we can go to DRA's website and find out formulas and so on and so forth, parameters, metrics. But here we have taxation without, if you will, exposure to the formula that develops it. I guess yes, in a short way, yes.
Any further questions for Senator Geiger? Seeing none, we have sign up in support of the bill is a Jason Stock, who is a lobbyist from the New Hampshire Timberland Owners Association. Mr. Stock.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 48. As you had mentioned, I am the director of the New Hampshire Timberland Owners Association. Our members, we have about 1,300 members across the state who own or manage over 1 million acres of timberland. And much of that is enrolled in current use. We're very active in the current use rate setting process, and we're actually active when the formula that is used to determine or calculate the assessment rate, when that was developed a number of years ago. And when Senator Gaida brought this bill forward, I was surprised that formula was not public knowledge, and we feel it should be. There's nothing to hide there. It is a pretty straightforward cash flow, net present value cash flow analysis done looking at timberland and looking at timberland from as if it were an investment, looking at it to determine, all right, what are the costs, what are the revenues that can be expected from that timberland. And it calculates and includes things such as timber growth rates, looks at different tree species. So it is a pretty standard model, and we feel it should be publicly available for folks to look at. I also want to stress a point that Senator Gaida had mentioned is when the model was being developed, there was a question about what management costs should be included in the model. For instance, maintaining boundary lines, doing timber inventories, things of that nature. And so the Department of Revenue reached out to us and other timberland owners across the state and said, can you provide us some examples of what your cost on a per acre basis would be for those types of activities? And so they did a sampling of timberland owners across the state, gathered that information on an anonymous basis, and then we're able to use that to plug into this model to calculate those carrying costs on this land. And you know, that was done with an expectation of confidentiality. And again, we believe this bill does not go against that promise, and we are supporting it. Again, I wanted to speak to Representative Almey's questions. Timber tax is separate. It is included in the model, but timber tax is looked and based on the value of that stumpage. In other words, that tree that's growing in the ground on your property, your timber tax is assessed on that value, whereas current use assesses the land beneath that tree. So current use determines what is the productive capability of this acre of land. You know, how much timber can that acre of land grow? What is the cost to maintain that acre of land? And then that's how it's assessed annually as a property tax. When you cut when that timber is on your property growing as stumpage, it is considered real property. At the time of severance, it used to be called the severance tax. At the time of severance, that real property then becomes personal property. And it's at that point that the timber tax is assessed, and it's assessed based on the stumpage value, this value of that tree standing. And so the model does take that into consideration, taxes paid when they calculate what are your carrying costs, etc. As for lands with conservation easements, there is a provision in state law, I think it's RSA 79B, that allows conservation easement land to be assessed based, again, on current use rates. It essentially defers to RSA 79A, which is your current use rate. But in almost all instances, conservation easement land is assessed using the current use model, which is RSA 79A. And so just to affirm that, yes, Senator Gaida is correct. By making this model for current use assessment publicly available, by de facto, it's also publicly available for those lands under conservation easements that are assessed under this mechanism. So I hope I answered those questions, and I'd be happy to field any other questions, and we hope you support Senate Bill 48. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your testimony. Representative Almey.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank Mr. Stock for clarifying something that I hadn't quite understood, and to correct something I said. The timber tax is 10% on, I belong to a homeowners association, and we get taxed by a 60-year-old federal bill at 30% of that, of the profit.
Gotcha.
That's just a statement, right? Okay. Further questions? Seeing none, then I'm going to have.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Stock. The next one to testify is Robert Johnson. a lobbyist from the New Hampshire Farm Bureau Federation in support.
I'm assuming it's,
Can you hear me, Chairman Major?
Yes, is that 877 Robert Johnson? Is the telephone?
Hello?
Is the
Can you hear
telephone?
me?
Yes, is the telephone number 877 Robert Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, then go ahead with your testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Rob Johnson. I represent the New Hampshire Farm Bureau as the Federation's policy director. Farm Bureau consists of 10 county Farm Bureau organizations, which consist of nearly 2,000 family farm members, as well as 1,000 other members. And we are in strong support of Senate Bill 48. There's no program more important to maintaining our working farm and forest lands in the state of New Hampshire than the current use assessment program. And we want the public and decision makers to have the information they need to have a good understanding of the program and so that there's full transparency. You know, we've, like Mr. Stock alluded to, we are kind of surprised that the formula is not public. We have both attended numerous meetings and hearings where the formula has been made available on an overhead in front of us and with handouts. And I'll leave my testimony at that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Johnson. Are you the same Johnson that was Sergeant of Arms at one time?
I am.
Okay, I thought it was.
One and the same.
Questions for Mr. Johnson? Seeing no questions, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to testify for or against Senate Bill 48? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 48.
Patrick has his hand up.
Does?
I took it down, Norm. You closed the hearing. So I just wanted to know if Ms. Lear wanted to testify or not. But you already closed the hearing.
That's a good point. Unofficially unclose it or officially unclose the hearing. Would you let Commissioner Carolyn Lear in?
Yep, I've just let her in.
Commissioner Lear, do you have any comments on Senate Bill 48? Commissioner Lear is from the DRA.
Good morning, Carolyn Lear, Assistant Commissioner at the New Hampshire Department of Revenue. I don't have anything really to add. We don't take a position on the bill, but I can confirm that Senator Guida worked closely with us to come up with this language, and we have no issue with providing this exemption.
Oh, thank you for your testimony. Any questions of Assistant Commissioner Lear? Seeing none, now I will officially close the public hearing on Senate Bill 48. Thank you. We made up some time. I'm opening the public hearing on Senate Bill 103-FN relative to nexus provisions for certain disaster-related or emergency-related work performed in the state. And this was presented by Senator Bradley. Is Senator Bradley here? Yes, he is. Senator Bradley, the floor is yours. Senator Bradley is muted.
Oh, I think I'm okay now. Can you hear me, sir?
Senator.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. How are you and members of the committee?
All right.
So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here as the sponsor of Senate Bill 103. This bill deals with nexus provisions for disaster-related work that's performed in New Hampshire. It was brought to me by telecommunications companies and utilities because often they must bring into New Hampshire resources and personnel from other states to try to get our systems back online in snowstorms, floods, hurricanes, that kind of situation. When these personnel in particular are here and they operate in New Hampshire temporarily to help our state recovery, they should not be burdened, and the employees should not be burdened with regulations that prevent them from actually working in New Hampshire as easily as possible during an emergency. And those things are taxes, licensing, registrations, that type of thing. So what this bill would do, Mr. Chairman, is streamline or remove the type of obstacles that can happen in a declared state of emergency when personnel or property come into New Hampshire that ordinarily would not be here. It streamlines licensing, permitting, unemployment provisions, business profits tax, and business enterprise tax. Other states like Connecticut, Maine, and Vermont have reciprocity agreements that exempt New Hampshire employees from this type of thing. When our employees go to those states to help them recover from an emergency, this would provide that kind of benefit to make sure that we're able to get people and equipment into our state during emergencies. I would just add, finally, Mr. Chairman, that any out-of-state folks that come in here would fully pay any gasoline taxes or the rooms and meals tax or any specific transactions. So the Senate passed this bill. I believe it was on the consent calendar, and we commend it to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony, Senator. Would you take questions?
Sure. Although I think there probably will be other people more knowledgeable than I, but I'll do my best to answer questions.
Okay, Representative, actually Representative Ames, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. And this may be a question for those others that you just referred to. But my sense looking at it, it looks like a very good bill. Let me start there. And fills a gap. But my question to you is whether this is true. It also looks like a bill that may be a template for bills that are being offered around the country. And my question to you, is that the case? And do you know whether other states are also enacting bills like this?
Yeah, thank you very much, Representative. My understanding is that it is based off of, some of the agreements that I cited in Connecticut, Maine, and Vermont. But again, some of the utility representatives, and let's remember that they have businesses in, or the utilities that serve New Hampshire also serve other states. So there would be some continuity, if you will, and reciprocities. But I think it'd be best to ask them that specific question.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Senator Bradley? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Bradley.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Major. Good to see you.
Same here. The next is Owen Smith, who's a member of the public representing AT&T. Part of the bill. Mr. Smith.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee, for this opportunity. AT&T appreciates the opportunity to express support for this. My name is Owen Smith. I'm the state president for AT&T here in New Hampshire. I'd also like to thank Senator Bradley for sponsoring this bill and understanding the role that private organizations like AT&T play in disaster response. AT&T provides communication services across the country. We have for 140 years. We have a little bit of history of responding to emergency situations. And the fact that so much critical infrastructure is owned by private companies, it's important to have an effective emergency planning and response. And it should really promote a partnership between the private sector and the government. And I think that that's certainly what this bill is all about. After events on 9/11, the 9/11 Commission created the FirstNet Authority. And in 2017, AT&T was awarded the FirstNet contract by the federal government for the next 25 years, of which we're 3 years into it, I believe. FirstNet is a public safety dedicated nationwide communications platform. We've been very busy here in New Hampshire and elsewhere across the country over the last 3 years, building out the FirstNet network along with AT&T's commercial network. To a certain extent, it's one and the same, but first responders here in New Hampshire rely on FirstNet, again, which is built and maintained by AT&T. So last year's hurricane season is a great example of why we need something like this and why we're asking for it with other members of the industry. It was the most active and fifth costliest hurricane season on record. 12 hurricanes made landfall onto the U.S. FEMA reported 16 major disasters last year. There were actually 5 major disaster declarations over the past 3 years here in New Hampshire. And so eliminating barriers that hinder a response is really key to effective recovery. And I think that the COVID-19 pandemic underscores the importance of reliable communication networks as many of us continue to do what we're doing today, working from home, learning from home. So our network employees came to us a number of years ago, and Senator Bradley is correct. Other states are doing this. 32 other states have done this across the country. Most recently, Connecticut at the end of last year, their session. Maine and Vermont also have this in place. And our employees basically came to us and others in the industry with this issue of roadblocks and legal requirements that are otherwise aimed at normal business conditions, which responding to a disaster is not. So we basically got together, went to CSL. We worked with them putting a model together that the basis of SB 103 is built on, very similar to 32 other states. And so that's really where we are today. And I'd just like to sort of finish up and make a comment. The CRA basically says in the fiscal note that the bill would result in an indeterminable decrease in revenue. And I'm not an expert, and I don't want to argue that, but I'll just say that I believe that the impact on revenue is de minimis. This is not about a cost reduction for AT&T or these other companies. This is really about getting the network back up and running after a disaster. This is about creating certainty and a swift response to network outages. You might even could argue maybe that if you have a network that's down and no one able to use it, that you're not generating tax revenue for the state of New Hampshire while it's down. So this potentially could have an impact, a positive impact on this. So anyway, SB 103 does not impact AT&T's operation or employees or any business entity dealing with a crisis in the state, who normally operate in New Hampshire as AT&T does. We are liable for the taxes, the registration, the licensing, or any other regular course of business requirement that will continue under this bill. So this again is about bringing resources to New Hampshire during specifically a declared state of emergency by the governor or the president, or property and personnel from other states, which previously has had no connection to New Hampshire. That's really what this is all about. So I'll stop there and answer any questions if people have them.
Well, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Smith. Questions? Representative Bromney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Smith, for your testimony. Now, AT&T is a large company. I'm sure you have a footprint in most states in the union and other places. So how does this impact apportionment of taxes between states for your efforts? So I'm trying to understand how this bill plays out. I mean, if there's an emergency on the coast because a hurricane came through and you sent a team from Vermont to New Hampshire because it didn't really impact Vermont, but it impacted New Hampshire, what did this bill do to how your profits, taxes on your profits in the portion between the states? Is there an impact? Or is that what this bill is about?
So I think you're probably talking about the business profits tax and business enterprise tax. It really wouldn't impact us, certainly from a financial standpoint. Again, we're here, business here, we're doing business with other states. So it wouldn't really, that bill wouldn't really impact that. What this really addresses is some affiliates that don't do business in this state, and also third parties that we get to come in to help us, whether it's delivering fuel to generators, which AT&T is not in that business. So we rely on third parties to do that. And it's as much about, here's another example where you might have an electrician that needs to come in and do some work. Well, if you're based in New Hampshire and are a master electrician, you'd be licensed. Well, if we bring in a licensed electrician from Connecticut, he's probably not going to have a license in New Hampshire. Basically, this bill is saying that's okay. If he's licensed under Connecticut law and that's where he's coming from, he doesn't need to have a license in New Hampshire during 10 days prior to the disaster relief declared emergency and 60 days following. That's all this bill's saying. So it might licensing, unemployment provisions. We have to ask volunteer employees to come in and help out. And some of the first things that they look at is, well, do I have to file taxes in New Hampshire now? Am I going to get another tax return? What about FICA? What about, how does this impact me? And we just want all of that to go away. And that's really what this is all about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Jenny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for taking my question. I guess I just have a question on the liability side of this. If businesses are coming in that the state of New Hampshire doesn't know who they are, for example, in the case of AT&T, if you're bringing in contractors who aren't licensed in the state doesn't know anything about them, where does liability fall if there's some issue with the contractor?
So in order to be a contractor of AT&T, they have to have the adequate liability. I don't know if I can answer that question. It really doesn't change anything. There is a reporting requirement if requested by the Secretary of State that is in this bill. That would, if requested upon by the Secretary of State, they would have to supply their name, state of domicile, principal business address, telephone number, all of that information, and proof that they actually do have a license, say in the state of Connecticut, to be an electrician. So that's in place. I hope that answers your question.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up.
So I did see that in the bill, and that's good. The only thing is that requires the state to request it. If the state isn't aware and hasn't requested it, then I guess that's just where I'm not sure it's a problem. I'm just trying to understand whether there is a problem there with liability in a case where the state doesn't know who it is. I mean, in the case of AT&T, you're saying that any contract you're bringing on, you've already made sure they have their own liability insurance. So I guess the greater question is AT&T may be acting responsibly. We don't know if other contractors are and again, maybe this isn't even a problem. I just want to raise it as is it a potential issue is my question.
Yeah. And I may not have the answer to that specifically. I do have an example of where we had a contractor in doing some work on a site. This wasn't during an emergency, but they were a vendor, and they may have even been an in-state vendor, but they actually did some damage to some public safety equipment on the tower. We took full responsibility of it. It was work that was being done for us. We took full responsibility for it. So again, I'm not sure that answers your question, but there are 32 other states that have very, very similar bills to this, and I have not heard of that as being an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Ames, followed by Representative Yearly.
Thank you. I think you may have just answered my question with your reference to the 32 other states, but my question follows up on my earlier question to Senator Bradley, and that is, can you speak to the degree to which other states have or are in the process of acting on similar legislation, have sort of enacted the provisions that are in this bill?
Yeah, so 32 states already have very similar bills. I believe that, well, Connecticut just passed almost the identical bill, I think in October, November of last year, right at the very end of their session. And Tennessee was also the state that just passed this, I want to say maybe even January of this year, but very recently. And then I believe this bill is also in Massachusetts. I was involved with the Maine one. Maine was actually the first state back in 2014 or 15 to put this into place. And Vermont followed shortly after that.
Okay, good. That's helpful. As a follow-up question?
Follow up.
Yeah. So following up on Representative Janigian's question, and perhaps you don't know, but do you know whether in any of those states there's been a problem with liability with contractors coming in under this umbrella who may not be properly insured or may be irresponsible?
So again, I am not aware of that. I would say that this model language has been around and probably been tweaked over the years. If this was an issue in some state or multiple states, my assumption is that they would have changed the language to address that. So I really don't think that it's an issue. And again, in AT&T's point, and I think we're talking about lots of big multinational companies here in utilities, I think we would step up and take full responsibility. But again, I don't think that's been an issue previously.
Thank you. That's a good answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Yearly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. You made a comment that just kind of tweaked my curiosity, Mr. Smith. You said in a disaster situation, you may call in somebody from outside of New Hampshire to refuel your generators. Well, That doesn't seem to be very cost effective, number one. You're hauling bulk fuel across state lines. And the other thing is, how would this bill not operate to deny business opportunities to New Hampshire entities that may not be directly affiliated with you as a subscribed contractor already, but are ready, willing, and able to do tower work for you?
Well, so the fuel situation, I'm not an expert on how we respond to disasters. I do know that we have third parties, whether they're in-state or out-of-state, that drive around with fuel trucks and fill up our generators where needed. There's lots of different types of contractors that we would either use within state, and we pay $7 million in local and state taxes, and I don't have the figure in front of me, but spend millions of dollars on local in-state partners to do business, goods and services. So you're right, it would make much better business sense to bring to work local, which we do 99% of the time, I believe. And we've got 150 employees, 155 here in the state that work here in the state exclusively for the most part, unless they need to go to another state for an emergency. So in most cases, we would do that, but there are maybe some specialties, or we've got assets that we bring in, that we station. We've got assets here in the state as well. These satellite colts or cows that we can put up a temporary cell site. We've got those in state, but we may need more than we have in state. So we've got to get somebody from, again, whether it's an AT&T employee in Connecticut or New Jersey, to drive these things up, or maybe a third party to drive these things up. We use a lot of subcontractors, both in and out of state. So I hope, hopefully that answered your question.
You all set, Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Representative Spilsbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. I'll take them one at a time, if I may. Going back to Representative Janagian's question on the notification clause, but setting aside the consideration of liability, just the mechanics of notice seems to have it backwards. How's the Secretary of State going to divine the presence of emergency workers? So would you have any objection if in the second line of that provision we simply deleted the three words "upon request by" and made notice mandatory to be initiated by the business or contractor?
I'm sorry, what's the question specifically?
If we take the words "upon request by" from the notice to the Secretary of State, then we eliminate the need for the Secretary of State to divine your presence and request a notice. We just simply say you provide a notice. Any objection?
Yeah. I mean, I understand why you would want to do that, but this bill is all about streamlining, and again, I don't believe that the liability issue is truly an issue, or it would be specifically addressed in this bill and in 30.
My question has nothing to do with liability. It's just about notice.
Okay. Taking that out would be put a process in place that's not in place today that would make us take that step. And that's what we're trying to avoid here, is streamlining it and making it very, hopefully identical in all 50 states. So if we've got a storm that came up and we were in multiple states and moving people from each state, we wouldn't have to worry about, in New Hampshire, we've got to notify the Secretary of State. So really what we're trying to do is streamline the operations, the process involved in getting employees and assets into the state.
Okay, I understand your
understand.
answer.
Your second question.
Yes, thank you. So out-of-state business in chapter 5, 319B5, is defined not to have a presence in the state. Now, in the case of AT&T, do you have a distinct corporate affiliate operating in each state? And so effectively, when you bring in property or employees, they're coming from a different corporate entity. Is that basically the case?
Correct. Correct. We did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Almy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Smith, on that same one on the bottom of page 1, Roman 8, registered business is defined on place in this that specifies that what we're talking about is businesses that are specifically on telecommunications and utilities, or could it also apply to a Dunkin' Donuts franchises from outside, or somebody like that that was going to bring in emergency food supplies and groups that would be a lot less organized the way you want to be organized and should be organized?
I believe this bill is focused at repairing and restoring physical equipment and buildings and infrastructure. I don't believe it would pertain to Dunkin' Donuts bringing in food for AT&T workers or anybody else. So no, I don't. So I think it's pretty specific on what kind of a business this would, and the work that they're doing would qualify under this.
And is that in the language somewhere? Sorry, follow up.
Yes, it's, let's see. Status of out-of-state business, let's see. Under section 1039 D2, status of out-of-state business and employees during disaster period notwithstanding. Perform disaster-related and emergency-related work during a disaster response period. Under D3, any out-of-state business that is present in the state or conducts operations in the state to perform disaster-related or emergency-related work during a disaster response period. So I think it's mentioned in a few different places in the bill.
It looks like D2, the introductory paragraph may specify that.
Yeah, critical infrastructure. Exactly. Tangible personal property, including but not limited to buildings, conduit lines, fiber optic cable, poles, pipes, structures, owned or used by public utility or rural electric cooperative or provider of communication services, which is what AT&T would be.
Are you all set, Representative Almy?
I think so, but I couldn't find the place he was reading from. I was reading from line 6 to 10 on page.
Yeah, that's, I was just reading from that too. The critical infrastructure means it's actually line, yes, on page 1, excuse me, yeah, it's line 7, 8, 9, and 10.
but that's a definition. And then critical infrastructure isn't used in page 2, line 6 to 10.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I could help.
Yes, Representative.
I think you have to put things together here. I think it's pretty well done. The definition of critical infrastructure we were just talking about, then that keys into the next definition, which is disaster-related or emergency-related work, which is repairing, renovating, and so forth, to critical infrastructure. So it's picking up the critical infrastructure there. And then if you go to the sort of the focus of the bill, which is the status of out-of-state businesses on the page 2, the provision is that no out-of-state business or out-of-state employee who is present in the state or conducts operations in the state to perform disaster-related or emergency-related work. That's the definition we were just looking at.
Thank you.
You got it? Okay, I'll leave it there.
Okay, any further questions of Mr. Smith? Seeing none, we have one other person signed up in support of the bill, but not testifying. And that's Maura Weston, a lobbyist from New England Cable and Telecommunications Association. And I think we all got a letter from a Gerard Keegan from Cedar Organization, which is another wireless communication industry in support of this bill. The only thing I want is Carolyn Lear from the DRA is here. Do you have any comments on this bill?
Thank you, Representative Carolyn Lear, Assistant Commissioner at the New Hampshire Department of Revenue. You have the bill with our fiscal impact statement at the back of the bill. And I think that's relatively self-explanatory. I think the proposed legislation could result in businesses not having nexus with New Hampshire for disaster recovery work here in the state, who would no longer have nexus if this bill were passed. And that is why we have indicated that there would be a indeterminable reduction in revenue. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee has about that.
Representative Almy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carolyn, on none of the, if a business had some kind of nexus now was based outside of New Hampshire and provided emergency services under this, would they be at all, could you still continue to tax them for the nexus they had otherwise?
I interpret the answer I interpret the bill as saying that yes, it's more of a but-for situation where if but for the disaster, the business would not have nexus, then we would not capture them. But if they would have nexus otherwise, I don't think this bill impacts them.
Thank you. So this would just be possible future revenue that would be based on their having come to help us.
That's how I interpret the language.
Any further questions of Carolyn Lear?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Representative Jinigian.
Yes, Representative. Your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I couldn't get to raise hand fast enough. So going back to Representative Spilsbury's question in section 319D:3, removing upon request by the Secretary of State, that would then mean that the state of New Hampshire would have the name and so forth of each business that is involved. And I guess my question would be, would that help in making sure that revenue is not lost by being able to account for who was in the state and who did work? I mean, I realize that we're trying to minimize the red tape with this bill. But I'm just wondering, as I look at this, how much red tape it really would be to give your name, state of domicile, and so forth, as we look at sections A through G or H. I'm going to turn the page here through H. It doesn't seem to be an onerous requirement to do that. And if that was done, would that help revenues not decrease?
Thank you for the question, Representative. That could certainly be a potentially helpful compliance tool, but I don't know that overall would impact the revenue outcome here. Registration alone will not, under this bill, determine whether an entity is subject to taxation. It is whether or not they have nexus. And in this instance, the bill provides that for disaster-related responses as outlined in the bill, nexus will not exist, and therefore taxes will not be owed.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions of the DRA or Mr. Smith? Seeing none, then I'm going to is there anybody else in the attendees list, Janine?
No, there's not.
Then I'm going to close the public hearing on Senate Bill 103. FN.
Thank you.
That takes care of the public hearings. Now tomorrow starts a new era. We go back to revenues. I'll be sending out, I believe, 3 spreadsheets this afternoon. One has to do with the latest DRA estimates that they came up with for min and max for their DRA type revenues. Another one will be a modified worksheet that the DRA and that the LBA put together for us, where we generated the revenues for the House Resolution 11. And what I've asked them to do is to remove those lines on that worksheet dealing with the governor minus mid-range, governor minus DEM estimates, and then put a new line in, which will say the committee agreed to estimates on 3/18/21. So this will be a working document that we'll go through. And the third spreadsheet is one that puts together the revenue effect of all the House Bill 2 items that affect revenues that we know about, that we went through the other day and then have been modified since. So if you review those 3, that'll help when we bring the DRA in to go over all their revenues. That'll probably, and then that will probably take most of the first day. The second day, we'll bring in those agencies that would have been affected by the economy. And what I mean by that is an effect would be more and more people are getting vaccinated now. So that's going to have an effect on, maybe a positive effect on rooms and meals. The stimulus check, the stimulus money is coming in, and by that time we'll know more what that will do for us, and that will affect our revenues. Everything that will affect our revenues up until the 18th, when we come up with our new revenue estimates, caused by anything we put that's in House Bill 2, and anything that is caused by the economy that will affect the revenues that we already generated for HR 11. So we need to accomplish this over the next 2 days, because the Finance Committee needs our best guesstimates at that point so they can do their work and have it done for next week. Any questions on that? I'll be sending you those 3 spreadsheets.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
are you thinking the afternoon will be something like 1 to 3?
Depends on the number of questions and
Yeah.
how we proceed. I think most of our work can be done tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then we'll wrap it up. And then what we have to do on Thursday, today is Tuesday. On Thursday, we should be through our interrogating in the morning, and then in the afternoon, we'll do our revenue estimates.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, I think he's asking because the Democrats have been called to a caucus starting at 3 on Thursday. And some of our members may stay, some of them may not be able to, feel they can't. So we will be able to discuss the effects of the federal stimulus and the vaccines also on Wednesday, won't we?
I'm hoping to.
Good, thank you very much.
I'm hoping actually we could get started on tomorrow. The days are so screwed up. Today is Tuesday, so Wednesday, yes, and Thursday we want to interrogate the other agencies in the morning, and hopefully exec in the afternoon. We might even be able to do some of our execing in the morning on Thursday. It depends on how the information flows. Anything?
That's great. Thank
Questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, it's Representative Browning. Is the plan to have the controller and the treasurer first thing tomorrow morning to deal with the credit carried forward issue?
Right. The first thing in the morning, we'll have the controller, the treasurer, and the DRA. So we can discuss those lines on the worksheet that I'm sending you. That has to do with credit carry forward. A credit carry forward issue could be is a tough issue. It may force delay in that. But before we even do anything, we need to understand what this really means. Is it legal what we've been doing? Is it good accounting practice what we've been doing? And that will determine what action we need to take after that. But we need to take care of that issue. So then after this all goes away, then we can get to the PPP funds. But I don't want to complicate things until we get the revenues for the budgets squared away.
Norm, do you know if the Senate's going to be voting out that PPP bill pretty soon? Do we know where that stands?
Yeah, I only wish they would do the same thing as they did for the meals and rooms. What they did, they voted unanimously to give the 40% of the meals and rooms to the towns. And then they tabled it. And the reason for tabling it is when they get the bill from us, and then it gives them an opportunity to add it to the budget bill. And they may do the same thing with the PPP, but if they do that, we still need to discuss that and form a position.
So what you're saying is that bill, Mr. Chair, may not come to us formally.
I didn't
If they decide to table it, the bill will not come to us formally.
Right, and then they won't have to worry about us and putting it into the budget, and then it would be settled at the committee of conference.
All right.
But if we've discussed it ahead of time, we have more chance in the committee of conference to.
Yeah, you got it, Susan. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question. This is Representative Burstein. What bills should we be prepared to exec in the coming 2 days?
It's a good question. I'll know tomorrow whether or not we'll have any time left over on Thursday to exec. If not, then we're going to do the exec on the following Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I request that we not exec after 3 o'clock on Thursday?
You got it. You got it.
Thank you.
Because there's nothing here that can't wait another week. Anything else? All right. Early this afternoon, you'll be getting that email from me with those 3 spreadsheets. Please review them and come prepared. Thank you, and have a good afternoon and the rest of the day.